Hi every Marvel gamers, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ruben. Today we are going to see Marvel Mystic Mayhem tier list for the live test version. So everyone know the global launch will launch tomorrow. So make sure you use the correct character on day 1 to level up your character. So let's get straight into the tier list breakdown. So here we have 26 characters now in the live test version. So there are 4 classes like fighters, strikers, controllers and defenders. For the tier list we have first in our list is S. These characters are based on overall damage and utility and usefulness in the current meta. For A tier these characters are same as S tier but slightly fall than the S tier. For B tier, they also have strong damage potential and supportive abilities, but not dominant as above tiers like A and S tiers. For C tier, they offer some utility, but they struggle without the support of the higher tier characters. For D tier, they are not necessarily bad, but they lacking in their kit. So first up we have is Ironman. He is really good striker character in the game because his passive ability ignores enemy's defense is a big plus for him, but he is lacking some defense in his kits. That's why I putting him in a A tier character. So next up we have his armor. So she is having a strong defensive kit and some decent damage, and also she is having a AoE strikes and shield in her skill. That's why I put her in a B tier. So next up we have is Hulk. He is one of the best defenders in the game. So he is also having a damage reduction in his skills. For overall he is very good in every content. That's why I put him in a B tier. Because of his healing and damage reduction, you can use him in a PvP content. So next up we have is Scarletwitch. I put her in a meta S tier because of she is having a critical rate and damage buffs in her skill. If you give a right highlights and artifacts, you will get the maximum potential. So next up we have is Psylocke. For initially she lacking some damage, but if you give a right buffs of critical damage, you will get the maximum potential of her damage. So that's why I put her in a B tier. So next up we have is doppelganger. He will gain the more attack speed in his skill, but not stronger than the some of the fighters like Psylocke. If you give a right buffs, you will get the maximum damage of his skills. So that's why I put him in a B tier characters. So next up we have is Thor. He is one of the best fighter in the game, and he is also having a AoE with heavy burst damage. With these buffs, he will get through the contents like PvE, like bosses. So that's why I put him in a A tier characters behind ironman. So next up we have is Angela. She is having some reduction of the defense, but it will not get through the many of the content in the game because some other defenders having the great performance in the game. So that's why I put her in a C tier characters. So next up we have is Emma Frost. She is one of the top tier controller of the game. She is giving high value in every aspect of the game like PvP, and she is also have debuff skills and outgoing healing for allies. So that's why I put her in a S tier characters. So I personally recommended to use her in a PvP because I using her in PvP with Juggernaut and Hulk. So next up we have is Spiderman. He is one of the good controller in the game. He is having heavy AoE damage and debuffs in his skills, but he is lacking some healing. That's why I put him in a B tier characters. So next up we have is Moongirl, Devil Dinosaur. While her damage and crowd control skills are very cool, but she is lacking survivability as a controller. So that's why I put her in a B tier behind doppelganger. So next up we have is Juggernaut. He is one of the best defender in the game now. He is having debuffs and shield around him, and he also having a massive damage in his ultimate move. You can use him in PvP with Emma Frost and Hulk also. I personally like him in the game very much, so that's why I put him in a S tier characters. So next up we have is Dream Queen. She is having debuff in her skill, and also she is having skill damage for allies with her ultimate move, but she is only lacking survivability and damage. That's why I put her in a C tier characters. So next up we have is Doctor Strange. He is top tier character in the game with healing and buffs. With this Vishanti Blessing skill, you can choose one of the three skills like buff, heal and debuff. He is also having a heal in his ultimate move. That's why I put him in a S tier. So next up we have is Moon Knight. I put him in a C tier. He is having healing in his ultimate move, but he is lacking damage in PvE content like bosses. So next up we have is Man Thing. He is have debuffs, healing and summons, but he is not good as other C and B tier characters. That's why I put him in D. So next up we have is Lady Bullseye. She is having invisible in her skill. Maybe you can rearrange the tier list in front or behind these two, Psylocke and Lady Bullseye. She is also have a follow-up attack in her skills. Because of her decent damage, I will put her in a B tier characters. So next up we have is Falcon. He is having a damage reduction buffs, but he is lacking damage and survivability. For these weaknesses, I place him in a C tier characters. So next up we have is Echo. Her single target damage with follow-up attacks, she gains little bit damage, but her overall damage output is not good enough. That's why I put her in a C tier. So next up we have is Storm. While Storm damage is not good as Psylocke and Lady Bullseye, with her skill she can reduce the enemy's damage and attack speed. That's why I put her in a C tier. So next up we have is Thread. He is having a summons, but as a standalone character he is not good enough. That's why I put him in a D tier characters. So next up we have is Misty Knight. She can do massive long range damage, and her ultimate move also having a long range damage. If you give right buffs to her, she definitely go up against Psylocke and Lady Bullseye too. That's why I put her in a B tier characters. So next up we have is Sentry. He is having damage reduction and shield in his skill. He is also having a long range attacks, and his ultimate move causes enemies massive damage. That's why I put him in a B tier characters. So next up we have is Sleepwalker. He is having healing and skill damage to allies, but offensively he is lacking damage. That's why I put him in a C tier. If you get his groups 2 or 3, maybe he go up 1 tier. So next up we have is Mr. Negative. He need debuffs to deal damage. As a fighter, he lack damage. That's why I put him in a low tier D. So next up we have is Black Knight. He is having decent damage, but he is lacking survivability. That's why I put him in a C tier characters. This tier list is after the live test version. So that's it for today's video. I will catch you in the next Marvel Mystic Mayhem video.